I've located the diesel air heater to go underneath the edge of my shower pan. I've got an overhang there. I'm going to build out a face frame, but it's very helpful to use some painter's tape to draw your template lines, pilot holes, and you can use tape to transfer locations of the structure underneath the floor that you need to avoid up to the top. So in my case, I've got to locate it between here and here when I drill through. And I've drilled pilot holes with a small bit, which allow me to go underneath and check the location and be 100% sure that I'm not going to hit anything. So now I'm going to drill large holes on the top, and once I get to the metal, I'm going to drill a little bit smaller diameter hole on the floor just to keep the amount of material removed to a minimum. I finished cutting my hole through the floor for the parking heater. I used a 3-inch hole saw on top, and I've offset those so that I can make an oblong hole. And then I used a 2 1/4 inch hole saw through the metal floor underneath. I need more clearance up high where the clamps and bolts for the parking heater go through the plate, but then lower I really just need room for the exhaust and intake. And it's hard to see, but my floor is about 1 3/4 inches thick. I've got an inch of polyiso, a 3/4 inch plywood, and then some sheet vinyl. So I needed a larger hole to allow room for all of the hardware on the bottom of the parking heater. I've done my initial connections on the bench because in my case I'm going to drop the intake and exhaust through my hole in the floor, and then I'll need to immediately mount to the floor. And I needed to adjust the mounting plate slightly, so I cut off about 1/2 inch on this far side, drilled 2 new smaller holes for just some good wood screws, drilled more holes here that'll be more accessible in my tight space. The intake has been connected. It's the stainless steel. I used a little beefier hose clamp than was provided with the kit. There's 4 mounting studs. Those are all tightened down. There's a rubber silicone gasket in between. The intake is the black lighter weight tubing. Again, a beefier hose clamp for that. Then the fuel line, you need to cut your rubber hose if you just got one large piece. Cut about 1 1/4 inches of this rubber hose, slipped it over the metal fuel pickup, put a small hose clamp on, and then I will put another hose clamp on before I put this through the floor. You also will need to take care of your fuel pump wire. There's going to be a small wiring harness that runs to the fuel pump, and that needs to be fed through the large hole, slid into this keyhole on your metal plate, and I added some extra wire, flexible loom or conduit, and taped that, wrapped in tape, where it goes through this tight metal space. I don't want vibration cutting through any wire insulation. So all of the attachments have been made to the bottom of the heater. I'm going to drop it through the hole and do a test before I really start mounting everything underneath the van. My diesel air heater has been installed. The mounting plate has been screwed to the floor. I re-drilled screw holes and trimmed a little bit off the mounting plate to make it fit. My cabinet face will just be very close in front of this housing. But it's under the wet bath, and that's space that really isn't used for anything else. And you can kind of see this way the overhang of my shower pan, and I've got it tucked underneath. I will add an exterior vent and louvers through the front of the cabinet face. And so up top I'm pretty well done. I will show you the underneath side. It's a little tight under here, but my parking heater, I've got an oblong hole that I used 2 1/4 inch hole saw and just kind of offset it and made an oblong hole for the underneath side. Really just need enough room for the intake, exhaust, fuel line, fuel pump wiring, so that's not too bad. You don't need as big a hole in the metal as you do up top on your floor. And then I just ran fairly short, maybe 12 inches, over to a screen filter. Lots of surface area, low restrictions are key here. And then I used the full-length exhaust provided and mounted the muffler just driver's side of the parking brake rod and cables, pointed slightly down, so if any condensation will drain out. And so I'm pleased with this. It's nice and clean. It's up and out of the way. This intake can't get hit by anything. Kind of tucked in behind this this forward brace. So now I just need to hook up the fuel tank. The driver's side location next to the driver's side headlight is where I intend to install the 5 or 5.5 liter diesel tank. You can see this hard plastic line I have fished up to the front, and that line turns into this black split loom conduit, which runs straight back against my new heater hoses that run to the water heater in the back. And so this fuel line, encased in this plastic loom for extra protection, just parallels my dual heater hoses running to the back. I use many of the same mounts, tucked it under the same straps and some zip ties, and tried to protect that fuel line as much as possible. The diesel fuel tank is now installed under the hood right next to the driver's side headlight. As you can see, there's just enough room for the 5.5 liter. It's about a 5 by 5 inch square by 11 or 12 inches long tank, and I used some measured out water to mark graduations on the tank, then dried it out, blew it out really well before I put any diesel fuel in it. But I wanted a fairly accurate way to tell how much fuel I had used or how full my tank was. And so my fuel line comes out of the bottom front of the tank, makes a turn in the hard line, and then the foam, pipe foam, is wrapped around my fuel filter just to keep it from rattling against the front metal supports. It's up front here so that it will be easy to change. I'll probably change it out every year or two. They're fairly inexpensive. So everything's hooked up. I retested the heater, and the only really thing left is to mount the control panel permanently. But for all intents and purposes, the diesel parking heater install is complete, and I'm very pleased with that option. This is the controller for the diesel parking heater. The timer, what looks like a timer, is really a clock. I just have not set it. It will reset if power is disconnected. Icons for the battery, the remote wireless controller, and then the diagram of the heater at the bottom that will animate as the cycle starts. So pressing OK once, that's the current temperature. It's only in Celsius, but that's not a big deal. Second time is the set point. So this is the temperature at which the heater is going to try to attempt to reach and then regulate. The voltage of the system, which I'm seeing reading low. I'm not going to pay much attention to that with my other meters in the van. And then into the last error code, which there's none. So to start the heater, we press the power button. And there's a click. You can see the blue fan icon is spinning, indicating the fan in the unit is on. The bottom green and red arrows, the cool air in, exhaust air out, are showing that is happening. And then the red, it's going to be hard to, but this little tiny red icon here that appeared is the glow plug. So that indicates the glow plug is on and our current draw is at maximum, around 8 to 10 amps. And that glow plug will stay on until the combustion has started and has been established, and then it will turn off. So now we also have the added icon of the fuel pump. This green icon here is the fuel pump. And so what's happening is the glow plug has been on for a couple of minutes. You can tell by the timer to some extent. It's gotten hot. The fuel pump is on and pulsing. It's probably too difficult to hear in here. And so we're pumping fuel up with the glow plug on, trying to establish combustion. So now combustion has been established. The glow plug icon is turned off. The fuel pump is running at a faster pulse rate, and the fan is kicked up to high. You may be able to hear the fan whirring at this point. And then what we're starting to see is icons here. We have 2 green bars. So we've got 6 different icons, or there's a yellow added. So 2 green, 2 yellow, 2 red bars will show up on that heater diagram, showing how much heat is in the unit, how hot the unit has gotten. And it gets quite warm. About 200 degrees is what I've seen on the output of the blower. So this is it's about all there is to the controller. When the unit reaches temperature, which we can adjust in the cycle, I'm going to turn it down to where my set point is below the ambient, and it will throttle down, idle down, and run at a low speed. That's what I've experienced on a couple of nights of use. It may take it a minute or two to do that. Now it's very important not to pull power to the heater, turn a switch off, or do something to kill 12 volts to the system, because the heater needs to run a shutdown cycle and exhaust all the air, all the heat with the air, much like a shutdown cycle in, say, a projector lamp or something. If it shuts off with too much heat in the unit, it will burn out electronics. And so to shut it off completely, press and hold the power. I found that mine sometimes takes a couple of presses. There's the off. And so you can see we've gotten up pretty warm already. We're up to 5 out of 6 bars, but the glow plug has come back on. This is to burn any remaining fuel in the system. The fuel pump pulse rate has dropped way off. The fan speed has dropped down, and the unit electronics will tell it at what point to shut itself off. So it will shut off the glow plug, the fuel pump, and eventually the fan once the temperature is safe. You can see we lost a red bar, so we're getting close. We won't watch this whole cycle, but that's essentially the basics of this control. There's a lot of other information videos out there on changing from pulse rate to degree C, and there's some options on this controller. But I'm very happy with the parking heater. It uses what I would call a minimal amount of diesel to heat during the night. It works well. The controller has got some error codes and some smarts to it to diagnose some issues, and so I would recommend it. It's at around $100, $125, depending on the unit. I think it's a great deal. You can see we've lost the glow plug icon, the fuel pump icon, and now we're just running the fan to finish cooling the unit down. So good luck with whatever air heat options you decide to go with on your van. We want to be propane free, and felt very comfortable with this diesel heater option. Happy trails.